Welcome everyone to another Montessori Europe webinar. Today we are going to focus on the role of the environment in our daily work with children. We are delighted to welcome Andy Lulka, who will introduce our discussions. Just to give you a little bit background to the webinars, they are based on conversations which exist already. They are recorded on the Montessori Everywhere website. They were held at the end of August to celebrate Montessori's birthday. The structure and the context and the questions were masterminded by Andy, and it is a huge pleasure for her to have agreed to host them for us again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barbara and Wendelin. It is my absolute pleasure to be here with you again through Montessori Europe to talk about the Montessori environment. I see a lot of familiar faces today and quite a few people who were here last time, so welcome back. I also see a bunch of new faces. So I'm gonna just very quickly introduce myself. My name is Andy. I was a Montessori child. My mother was a Montessori teacher and is now a Montessori head of school and is sitting right down there on my screen. And I am officially trained in 3 to 6. I am partway through my training in 12 to 18. I have a master's in Montessori integrative learning with a focus on the adolescent years. And I have worked with children all the way from toddler up through age 15. So that's just a really quick introduction to me. So you know where I'm coming from. I was also born in Mexico and attended Montessori schools in Mexico before my family moved to Canada, where I attended a different Montessori school. So I'm coming from a really broad perspective of what environment is. And when Barbara and I and Simone were working to put together the environment panel for Montessori Everywhere, what we looked at was that we wanted, like all our panels, we wanted as much diversity as possible in terms of our speakers. And what we were really looking for were speakers who had intercultural experience, Montessori intercultural experience. And the reason for that was that we wanted to give an impression of how the environment is not something that is set, but is more of an idea that crosses cultural boundaries. And so the elements that make up the environment that are so important that cross cultures are not the physical aesthetic ones. And I think that our panel really got that across. I think they really spoke to that so deeply. You know, when Dr. Montessori herself talks about the environment, she talks about beauty a lot. And what we heard from our panelists was that beauty can mean different things in different places. So interestingly, last week at Integrated Montessori, we were talking about the Secret of Childhood, chapter 20. And what she says is that there are 3 basic elements to the environment. That it is a pleasant place where children can be left to their own devices. That the adult has spiritual humility, intellectual calm, and an understanding of the child. And that there be special materials. And this is where we tend to get stuck as Montessorians on those special materials. But here's what she says about those special materials in chapter 20 of The Secret of Childhood. She says, they are attractive objects which perfect their sense perceptions, enabling them to analyze and facilitate their movements. Is it possible to create a Montessori environment on a desert island? If we look at these 3 things, the answer is really, why not? Why would it not be possible? Why wouldn't we be able to do it? And I think when we look at it, it comes back to us. Because while it's true that if we were on a desert island, we may not have the pink tower in all its scientific precision and beauty. And if you know me, you know I am irrationally obsessed with the pink tower, and that I have a tremendous reverence for it as a material and as representative of the entire system of education, in that it is so precise and beautiful and involves movement and involves the senses and involves mathematics and ties the entire curriculum together. But we don't have a pink tower on a desert island. So what do we do instead? And I think that's where we get stuck, because we are so focused on the material aspects of our practice. We're so focused on having that beautiful environment with all the materials. And maybe what we really need is to go back to those words, to provide attractive objects which perfect sense perceptions, enabling them to analyze and facilitate their movements and also concentrate. As much as I love the pink tower, it is not necessary to do Montessori well. And that's a really controversial statement. So if you're still with me, then I thank you for that. So one of the things that struck me in the panel discussion was when Marvin talked about the difficulty that adults have in creating effective nature-based experiences in education. And what he said is that there's a mental wall that adults have. And this goes back to the idea of the prepared adult being a part of the prepared environment, right? And what Dr. Montessori says about spiritual humility, intellectual calm, and understanding the child. How much do we trust the children? Do we trust them enough that they will be able to learn without the pink tower? Do we trust them enough that they will learn if they're not in a perfect environment? Or are we fearful and rigid? And are we staying stuck in our albums and in our understanding of this material has to follow this material and has to follow this material? Or are we looking at the child? And I think that is where we have to do that spiritual preparation on ourselves, where we have to really look at where our actions, where our design of the environment is impacting the children, where our relationship with the environment is impacting the children. We tend to conflate Montessori as a system of education with the Montessori method and the materials and those beautiful, simplistic, minimalist environments that we are so used to seeing in most of what we would call the Western world, in Australia and Western Europe and Canada and North America. We're used to seeing that aesthetic, right? That's very clean. There's a lot of white. There's a couple of plants, and it's all very calm. And yet, I go back to this chapter, which, by the way, is the method in quotations, because Dr. Montessori did not have a method. But she talks in that chapter about cabinets with doors, which is unheard of in the classrooms that I've been in. Cabinets with doors. She talks about colored curtains. And she talks about brightly painted furniture. These are things that are not in line with what so many of us consider that ideal environment. And Junifa talked about this as well in that panel, where she talked about the difference between the training centers in North America and the training centers in Italy, where she talked about how here in North America, everything is so almost sterile. And in Italy, it was all bright and colorful. And Barbara also alluded to that when she talked about the way that the environment is a reflection of who we are. So when we try to subsume our own aesthetic in favor of what we consider to be the gold standard, then we are repressing ourselves and we are not allowing ourselves to relate to the environment in an authentic way, which then doesn't allow the children to relate to the environment in an authentic way. So what I always say is when I walk into a school and all of the classrooms look the same, that's a big red flag for me. Because it means that the teachers are not being authentic to themselves. It means that the teachers are not self-actualizing. The teachers are not normalizing. The teachers are not being who they are. When I walk into a school, I want to see classrooms that, yes, there's a certain level of consistency, and each classroom feels different because it's full of different people. And again, to go back to that chapter, she actually says the environment itself is in reality an active and a vital response to new patterns manifested in the life of a growing child. And I'm just going to let that sit there for a moment. What that means to me is that the environment is not static. And we all know this because we learned it in the training, but then how many of us actually do this? How many of us actually change the environment as the children change? How many of us adapt the environment when the children need us to? One of the things I often see and struggle greatly with is this idea that we have to change the environment on a schedule. We have to shift practical life every 2 weeks, and we have to shift cultural every season. And every time there's a holiday, we have to change all the counting materials into baubles that, reflect whatever that holiday is. Does that sound like an environment that is an active and vital response to the patterns manifested in the life of a growing child? Because to me, it sounds like an adult needing to do something. So for me, this is the key piece. It's an active, vital response. So can you do that on a desert island? Yes, you absolutely can. If you have the physical and mental resources and the emotional resources to do it as a human being, if you are not disabled in some way, you should be able to create a true Montessori environment that is vital and responsive to the patterns manifested in the children if we have that intellectual calm and the understanding of the child. So Barbara also wanted to make sure that we cover this question of cultural responsiveness and of making sure that we look at how to make each classroom a place of where all children are welcome, really, where all children feel welcome, but also where they can see themselves reflected and where they can learn about people who are not present in their immediate environment. So there's a concept called windows, mirrors, and sliding doors. And I forget the name of the person who put it forth, and I think Gwendolyn can probably help me with that in a couple of minutes. But there's this wonderful theory that children need mirrors because they need to see themselves reflected. When a child sees themselves reflected in a book as a character, they feel a relationship with the person in the book, and they feel the possibility. When they see an astronaut who looks like them, they feel like they too could be an astronaut. When they don't see those things, they don't feel that. They feel like that is for somebody else, that is not for me. So that's the importance of the mirrors. It's about showing the child that they can be, that they have the potential to become. Thank you. Simone actually dropped that in the chat. It is Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop who came up with this windows, mirrors, sliding doors things. The windows are for us to look outwards into the world. So if mirrors reflect back at us, then windows are what we see out there. And Montessori is already really well placed to do this because we have a phenomenal cultural geography curriculum, if we want to call it that. But we have this idea, we know, because of peace education and because of cosmic education, that our job is to show the child how different people in the world live. And through the elementary curriculum, we have that whole beautiful thing with the fundamental human needs and with the timeline of life that shows how people meet those needs in different ways and how all of those ways are valid. And so Montessori already has that. Where we have to be careful is, are we really showing them windows, or are we showing them reflections of our own biases towards those people who are not like us? And I put that in quotation marks for those of us who can't see me. We're like us. So that's where we can really play with that in Montessori education. And the sliding doors. The sliding doors are an opportunity to walk through and interact. And so in the Montessori context, what I picture there is, when we bring somebody in, when we bring in a parent to celebrate a special holiday or tell us their family history, that's a chance to interact, to step through, and be together in a broader sense. So I know I've given you a lot to think about. I know I've said a couple of things that are a little bit controversial, but that is why I was invited to come. And I think Gwendolyn is ready to put you into your breakout rooms. So I will remind you when you go into your breakout rooms, if you could please turn on your cameras, if it is possible for you. And do participate, unmute yourselves, have a lovely dialogue, and do keep your introductions short so that most of your time can be spent on digging into these questions. You have facilitators in each of your rooms who will guide you through short introductions and then the questions. There is no rush to get through all the questions. If you get through all the questions, that's awesome. If you don't, that's okay. If you have other things that are so much more pressing to talk about, then do that. This is your time to connect with each other, to bring out your own wisdom and the wisdom that each of you shares. So enjoy, and we'll see you back here in half an hour. I will be popping in and out of your rooms, so I'll see you in there too.
Wendy, would you like to share with us the little findings that you have made in your group? I can't see you on the screen, but I hope you are somewhere there.
No, I'm here. I'm here. I had a wonderful group. We had such lovely discussions, and it was really difficult to jot down everything. But I think we all agreed the task was to raise the children to grow up in their own culture, and observing and reflecting was so important to then build your environment. And it's not the materials, it's what is behind the materials. And we talked about various examples around the world where people are not just a desert island, but there's lots of places where this is going on. We talked about the pedagogical principles are more important with the philosophy that underpins everything. But we all agreed we could easily do the desert island, but don't put us there for the moment. The next one, we looked at the sustainability, which is, I think, is very much in our minds at the moment. And Marian talked about her school is now part of this OMEC group, which we have in the UK. And if there are people from the UK watching, this is such a good program to have in Montessori schools, and it's part of the UN sustainability. There's a special name, but I can't just think of it.
It's the Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you, Sustainable Development Goals. But it all comes within the cosmic task. And everybody felt very much that this was good. And I wondered, Gwendolyn, if you could put up a link for Roots and Shoots, because we talked about that, which is Jane Goodall's charity. And again, this can be all over the world. You can join Roots and Shoots, and there's so many things that you can do with the children. And we really came out with the normal curriculum really is rooted in Montessori. And I just feel very proud to think that. So it's a really brief resume, but it was lovely. I really enjoyed it. I hope my group did. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Sarah?
Yes, we had an interesting conversation. I think the bit that came out is that we are, the people in the group are not rigid, able to trust the child. And whilst the place for materials to support the children to develop abstract thinking and abstract concepts through material, through exploring and experimenting with the material could be seen to be important. We all agreed that it didn't have to be the exact pieces of material. So on a desert island, we could definitely do that. We talked a little bit about, because we had some newly qualified teachers in the group, or some in training at the moment, about how difficult it is for students and newly qualified teachers sometimes holding on to those materials, and how do we get to the place where we could let go. And Heidi and Simone were talking about the fact that you need to know the materials very deeply, and then you can sort of let them go and walk away and understand that it's not a full presentation that's always required, but maybe just a little movement or a touch. And Camilla added to that she enjoyed allowing children to show her how they use the material, and then she could show them how she used the material. So this real idea of learning together, which is something that you, Barbara, talked about in your Desert Island blog and came out from the talk. The idea of there being a wall, or parents or colleagues who perhaps don't understand the approach, and how do we work with them? How do we work to share the things that are really important? And so talking about role modeling and looking at everyday tasks, or looking at things and looking at other ways of understanding what the children need at that time. What came across very strongly is the importance of observation. I loved it. Heidi said she was thinking, you know, why are we talking about this? We just go outside and we learn from the environment and we follow the child. And then suddenly, wait a minute, no, somebody's talking about multiplication, and of course we need materials. And so this sort of, you know, challenge of let's be free, but also understanding the value. And I think that's a situation that many of us find ourselves in. I've thoroughly enjoyed the environment, the conversation about the environment. I think what I took from it is how important it is that we put the children out in the world, that we walk with them in the world, indoors and outdoors.
Thank you. Carola. Unmute.
Hi, we had a lovely conversation about the desert island, and we were very excited about first practical life lesson would be, of course, how to open coconuts and how to make a fire out of sticks and such things. And we all decided that the materials are not what is important here. It is actually to follow the child. And this is a great opportunity for us to follow the child and let them explore and show us what they are interested in. And that we are actually very important for them too, because we would then be the dynamic link between them and this new exciting environment. And teaching, we don't need the materials. They were not the essential thing. We can teach with a stick and a bucket of mud, and we can still get everything through with that, someone said, and I thought that was absolutely lovely. And we were thinking about the cosmic aspect of being on this desert island, looking at the stars, the darkness and stars shining down at us, and having lovely discussions, getting the language through there, and then shared sustained thinking about in everything that we heard. and just taking that further and following the child. We all also were very, very passionate about the sustainability, because it's so relevant to us. And yet again, we're coming from different cultures and different places. And so, for instance, some of us don't have enough water on our where we live and so on. So for, you know, for that is a very natural thing for children then to become aware of not wasting water and how much we use and so on. And we're doing beach cleanups. People are making experiments. One girl that I was on in my group here, she was telling us about how they are actually burying waste in the ground, and to teach the children of how it doesn't disintegrate. And many experiments, very creative minds of how to get through the importance of understanding at an early age about sustainability. There's so many notes I have here. And someone also brought up, you know, set the question to the group of, for instance, when it comes to paper, how much paper do you allow your children to use when they come into the classroom? Is there a certain amount, or can they use as much as they like? Well, the question was then, well, are they using recycled paper, or are they recycling the paper that they are using? So it was a lovely discussion throughout. We never really got to the third question, I'm afraid. But that's what it was. Love the group.
Thank you so much. Christian, are you brave enough to share, having put you on the spot?
Yeah, luckily Carola has saved me, because we didn't even manage to discuss the second question. So we discussed the second question a bit, but we were much focused on the desert question. So you challenged us so much that we used much time on that. So I can't hardly pronounce that, or I present that everyone has passed and will be transferred to the next level. So that's a good group. And yeah, even we had a mixed discussion that some were very active and some were preferring to listen. But I think this was good, and it was still okay. So the conclusions are that, yeah, I think we can say that, yeah, on a desert island, you can easily do a Montessori environment under one condition: you need the child there. So without the child, it might be difficult. So, and then if you follow the child, if you observe the child, then I think it brings yourself to the ideas how to create the classroom on a desert island. So I think if you have this in mind, then the, yeah, I think there was a nice quotation. I think if you as a bridge to the child, then it's not important where you is your environment, and then you are the bridge to the child. Actually, the teacher is always part of the environment. Of course, the funny things you need to do on an environment to survive is a perfect exercise of practical life. So this is, I think, maybe not a good idea in our environments to exercise this. Some parents might be maybe they are afraid, but on a desert island you can easily do this. And this is maybe it even connects a bit to the situation we have in Montessori Europe. So if you understand our different places where we are as islands, we all have different environments. Some can afford the full Ninos catalog, and some even can't, and they still can do Montessori. So I think in that sense, I think we got a good exchange on how you can do Montessori, believing on yourself, and the importance of the adult as the one who is observing the child. I need to check my notes if I forgot something. Yeah, the discussion about sustainability. I'm not sure if I can get everything right back here, but the thing is that sustainability we discussed in the context of normalization, and how a sustainable environment can help to direct to help child to normalize and all this stuff. So this was quite interesting. Of course, there was a connection with the cosmic tasks and all the things in it. And yeah, the thing is that the child will always find things to do. So I think if you trust the child, that the child will always find things to do, then your task as an adult is to observe, find the right things to support. And then it doesn't matter if you have one thing or 20 or 40 materials. So this more or less was our discussion. We didn't finish because then at the end we got very stressed because we had just 4 minutes left. So we need 40 minutes more. And but
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It kind of feels that the last questions about the mirrors and windows is something that we actually need to revisit and that we need to give it more time, and maybe that will set us up for webinars in the beginning of the new year. I would like to thank my group for having a conversation. It was like talking to old friends. I was very fortunate enough to have people in the group who shared very similar ideas. But the one message that has come from one of from Blanca was her experience of a little setting for children on the verge of a rubbish dump in Mexico City, where she lived, and the parents went to the rubbish dump to sort the rubbish in order to be able to sell things to make money. And there was a little cardboard box in which women gathered all the children of the parents who came to the tip, and she told them stories and she played with them. And it had none of the physical beauty of the Montessori environment. It was just a box on the verge of the rubbish tip, but it had all the spiritual nourishment the children needed in the love that the woman gave to the children. And for me, that is without any doubt the message for today that we need to all take with us, because I was so touched by it. We all agreed about the different ways of sustainability. We definitely felt that it is part of particularly of the early years classroom, when we showed the children how to recycle, how to value our resources, but it's also an opportunity for telling of stories about water, about where our produce comes from, and all these things which make our everyday life ordinary, yet it is a journey of discovery for the young children, because for many children, milk comes from a carton from a supermarket, not necessarily from a cow, and the water in the tap runs endlessly, whereas for the children in Thailand, where Angela worked, the water was communal and every drip of water had to be saved. So there's much learning for us all to be done, and we will definitely revisit mirrors and windows in the new year. And over to you, Andy.
Thank you. So what a lot of beautiful things came out of your conversations. As I was hopping through, and from what I'm hearing in the reports, a couple of things are really standing out to me. That Montessori work is relational. It is about our relationship with the child, the individual child, but also with the group of students that we've got, with the community. It is relational. It is also about our relationship with the environment. So what matters more about the environment, and I think Barbara summed it up beautifully with Blanca's story, is that beauty is not necessarily material, right? It's about that relationship. That's what is at the core of Montessori practice. And of course, that's going to bring us back to us, right? It's going to bring us back to that whole idea of the intellectual calmness and the spiritual humility. And I don't think I can overemphasize that enough, the spiritual humility and the intellectual calmness. What that means is quieting our thoughts and allowing our spirit to take the lead. And of course, that's going to bring us back to observation. And observation is something that I promise I will get more into when we look at the adult panel, because that is the role of the adult. So when we get into the adult panel, we'll talk more about observation and how it can actually be transformative and how it can help us with those relational aspects of our practice. The other thing that really stood out to me was actually in Barbara's group, where between a whole bunch of you were talking about within sustainability, not to create a scarcity mindset, but to create a mindset of hope and of taking what we need. So take as much as you need, no more, no less. And about creating a sense of appreciation, again, through beauty. We do that through beauty a lot, but creating a sense of appreciation for what we do have. And that just brought me right back to cosmic education, because cosmic education is all about understanding those interrelationships. It's about understanding, what do I need? What do you need? What does the world need? What does this plant need? What does this fish need? What do I need? What do you need? And when we get into the community panel, I think there will be more of an opportunity to talk about what that means in terms of human relationships, and to look at that windows and doors concept a little bit more. But for today, what does that mean in terms of us and our environment? Cosmic education is about understanding that relationship between humans and our environment. And Dr. Montessori put us on a different level to the rest of nature, right? She called us human society supra natura. I know I'm not pronouncing that right in Italian, so I apologize to the Italians on this call. But we are the super nature. We build on top of nature. We have the power, according to Dr. Montessori, that no other living being on this planet has, of creating an environment, of adapting our environment to us. All other animals, she says, and all plants and all beings adapt to their environments. And obviously we humans do that too. We adapt to our environments, but we have the additional cosmic task of adapting the environment to suit us. And so it becomes our responsibility to understand what that environment is and what that environment means in order to sustain us. Now, Dr. Montessori gave cosmic education lectures to CASA teachers in the 1930s. And this is a practice that has been lost. We don't do that anymore. We don't give cosmic education lectures to CASA teachers. And so what gets lost in that is that CASA teachers don't get that big picture that the elementary teachers get and that the adolescent teachers get of the cycles of life, the cycles that sustain life. We don't get the geology cycle, and we don't get the weather cycle, and we don't get the water cycle. Dr. Montessori believed that if we understood those things, then we could understand the interconnectedness of all things, and that we could then do a better job of guiding the young child, even if we're not teaching those things. So understanding that relationship, that all of those cycles that keep our lives going impact each other, and that we impact those cycles, and that those cycles impact us, and that we as humans have the power to adapt our environment to what will sustain us best. That is what cosmic education is really at its core. So when we're talking about relational elements within Montessori, that is an absolute key relational element. We need to go outside. We need to step outside of classrooms. When I told people on Facebook that I was going to be doing this event, somebody said that Peter Davidson has often said that Montessori is a method of education that has been held back by school. So, you know, Dr. Montessori wanted to revolutionize school. She wanted to completely revolutionize school. And yet so many of us work in schools, right? And we work in schools that are structured in very traditional ways. So how do we move away from that? How do we get ourselves out of the classroom? How do we get ourselves out of needing the pink tower? Again, it comes back to our preparation. It comes back to our willingness to really engage with that, to learn about our broader environment and to appreciate, to learn how to appreciate, for us to tap into our awe and our wonder. Right? Dr. Montessori said, it is not enough for us to love the child, we must also love and understand the universe. And then she told us to give the universe to the child. And so that is what a prepared environment is. The prepared environment is our way of giving the child the universe. We can't do that within four walls. And we certainly can't do that if we're stuck on the pink tower, followed by the broad stairs, followed by the number runs. And you know I love that sequence, and you know I am obsessed with the sensorial materials and how they fit in and how they fill the child up, and I love it. And if we get stuck there, then we're missing the point. So it's not an either or, it's a both and. How do we do the pink tower and the universe?
Andy, exquisite introduction to our session and most thought-provoking conclusion. It has been a huge honor to share this discussion with each and every one of you. It is wonderful that we can continue to learn together. And please, please join us next week. We are going to explore the adults. So we will be back very, very soon in these conversations. Thank you. And I hope that you will be able to give a speck of the cosmic dust to the children tomorrow in your classrooms. Good night, everybody.